right, so let's start with this Torah right here. This Torah, not the outside. The outside was made by a local carpenter. It's a replica. But the inside, the Torah scroll itself, is about 300 years old. And it was a Torah that was smuggled by a very dear Jew, who's the father of CBT's president, from Iran, from Tehran. He would still do business in Tehran, go back and forth from America to Tehran once every few months. And during his very last trip a few years ago, he said to himself, I have to take up my family Torah. It's there, it's my family's, and I want it to be with my family. So he had to smuggle this Torah out. If he had been caught, who knows what could have happened to him? I don't have to tell you, use your wild imagination. But in order to smuggle it out, he had to bribe all sorts of people, security officers at the airport, judges, policemen. He eventually put this Torah in one bag. In front of that bag by the security, he had an identical bag. And the first bag went through. It didn't have any suspicious content. The second bag with the Torah was about to go through and the electricity shuts down. He again had bribed people for that to happen. And he tells the security guys, hey, I'm late to my plane. Just let me go. It's the same bag. Can't you see as the first one? The first one went through. Let the second one through. They let him go. That's how he smuggled it out. But it came here. We dedicated it about 10 years ago. It was a great celebration. It's about 300 years old. It's written on goat skin. Torahs have to be written on kosher animal skin. Now, there are many different types of kosher animals. You have cows, you have deers, you have goats, you have sheep. Goat apparently was more common in Iran than cow, which is today more common in most places. So it was written on goat skin, very smooth, therefore. And again, it's about 300 years old, and it's very, very special to read from it because you really feel the Jewish continuity of generation to generation. Who knows how many Jews hundreds of years ago read from this, and now we're continuing their voice. So that's that. That's this Torah. Then we have this Torah right here, which is also a very, very special Torah. It's from the neighboring country, believe it or not. So again, the outside is just a replica. That's pretty new. But this Torah is even older than that one. This Torah is about 450 years old. As you can see, it's brown. The scroll is very brown. It's different than the other one. That's because it was written on deer skin. That was the common animal from which the Torah came from. The Torah came from Iraq. Where exactly in Iraq? From Baghdad. Where exactly in Baghdad? From Saddam Hussein's palace. When the US Army stormed in 2002, they found that he had confiscated many, many Torahs and many other Jewish artifacts. And the US Army then shipped these Torahs to Israel. A scribe checked them. Many of them were not kosher. Some would not be rectified. Those that were kosher or those that could be rectified and then turned kosher again were then auctioned off. We had someone here who bought this Torah and then donated it to our community. It's a very, very special Torah, not just because of its age, but again, because of all of the challenges that it went through and the moments in which it almost faced destruction. But reading from this Torah really is reading from the story of the Jewish people, that we too have been persecuted, we've been confiscated, we've been locked into all sorts of dark rooms, but eventually we've prevailed, and our voice sounds brightly again, just like the voice of the Torah when we read from you. So that's this Torah, also very special. Yes.
Was it in the palace because he wanted to keep it to destroy it?
No, I think he just liked collecting artifacts. I think he was just a greedy man. And he wanted to steal as many things as he could. Yeah. Then we have other Torahs here. This one, by the way, is a Torah was dedicated by the Ephesians, but the cover of this was just made for this Simchat Torah. As you can see, it says here, it quotes the Ecclesiastes that says there's a time to mourn and a time to dance. And then this cover is dedicated to all those who perished on October 7th on Simchat Torah. And this Torah, this Simchat Torah, we danced again. by remembering all of them through this cover. That's the cover of the Torah. We have a Torah here from Mexico City. The beautiful Torah, small Torah, quite new. But what's unique about this Torah is that before it was completed, it was taken to all sorts of rabbis. Rabbi Ovadia Yosef was the Sephardic chief rabbi of blessed memory. Rabbi Kanievsky was another big scholar, and many other big rabbis in Israel to add their own letter, to fill in a letter. So this Torah really carries the holiness of all of these rabbis in Israel. And eventually a dear friend from Mexico City dedicated it to us. And you have all sorts of other Torahs too. But as you can see, all of them, the other more modern Torahs are written on cow skin. This Torah was probably the newest Torah we have. This also was written in Israel, donated to us. As you can see, it's white, it's cow skin. Yes.
How do you decide what Torah you're reading from on certified services?
Oh, that's a great question. The one that's usually, first of all, ready, because some Torahs are, depending on the time of the year, you wrap them to correspond to the reading of that day. So if today I'm reading at the beginning of the Torah and the Torah is wrapped at the end of the Torah, I'm not going to use that Torah. So the one that's ready, the one that's easy to read from, this one is harder to read from, as you could see. But it depends. The Zohar, the famous book of Kabbalah says that Akol talui b'mazal, everything is dependent on luck, even a Torah scroll in the ark. Sefer Torah shebayechal. Which one you're going to pick is dependent on luck. So whichever Torah is lucky enough for us to pick it. All right, so that's the story of some of our Torah. Yeah. Let's continue here with the next question with no particular order. What is a Torah teaching that has shaped your worldview the most? Well, I think that changes every day. But look, there is the statement by Rabbi Akiva in the Talmud that says that the most important rule of the entire Torah, Klal Gadol b'Torah, is the verse of love your fellow as yourself. V'ahavta l'racha kamocha. It certainly has shaped my worldview, as it should shape the worldview of every Jew. We're here in order to love, and to love, and to love more, and to love more, and to connect, and to love, and to give, and to love. That's what we're here for. So there's no doubt that underlying teaching, but it changes every day, depending on what I'm learning on that day. I'll share with you a quick teaching that I just learned and I found quite beautiful. And that is that scientifically, I don't know if you know this, but you can't tickle yourself. Only other people can tickle you, right? Did you know that? You can try to tickle yourself. Try. Go for it. Try that. It's impossible. You can't tickle yourself. Doesn't make you laugh. Only other people can tickle you, right? Now, why is that? Element of surprise, right? So some say that your body, your neurons are not expecting this tickle when other people tickle you, and therefore it makes you laugh. While when you tickle yourself, you're expecting it because you're doing it to yourself. It could be. But I'm going to give you this Torah teaching that shaped me on that day and told today, actually. And that is that because God created something called laughter. But laughter is not something that we should keep to ourselves. If you keep laughter to yourself, you miss the point. Laughter is something we should share with others. So if you keep laughter to yourself, if you tickle yourself, it it's not activated. It doesn't work. But when you do what God wants you to do and share laughter with someone else, that's when you're doing what you're supposed to do with laughter. So you can't tickle yourself, but you can and you should tickle others, because laughter is meant to be shared with as many people as possible. So here's the Torah teaching that has shaped me. Also, depending again on the day, and every day it changes depending on the Torah that we are learning on that day. Next question. How do you reconcile faith with doubt in times of difficulty? And understand that whether it's individual difficulty, people going through a tough time, sickness, for example, God forbid, or financial difficulties, or whatever it may be, or whether it's collective difficulties. I would apply this question to our times. as a people. We are facing quite some challenges, especially ever since October 7th. So how do you reconcile doubt when these hardships make you doubt yourself, maybe even doubt God, and faith? Faith in yourself and faith in God. And I would say that it goes to the very definition of faith. What is faith? Faith is not being gullible. It's not saying, I'm naive and you know what? Yes, God, I believe in you, whether I understand it or not. That's not what faith is. Faith only comes into play in Judaism after I've exhausted all intellectual options. That's what faith is. When I've tried to understand God and I still can't understand God, then I have to surrender to faith. That's what faith is. If I'm having faith and that faith is not making me think, it's not making me feel, it's just making me robotic, then that's not faith. And in many ways, I think that's how you reconcile faith with doubt. Yes, you're allowed to have doubts, and you are supposed to question those doubts and question God. That's what we do in Judaism all the time. And sometimes we'll reach satisfying answers. Sometimes we won't. And when we don't, then when we say, God, I can't understand you, but now I'll have faith in you. And I think that's how we reconcile it. So it goes to the very definition of faith, because faith, again, it has to come after we've doubted, after we've questioned, after we've tried everything and still things don't make sense. Then God comes into play. And I think that in many ways, God works like that. I think God only makes you successful once you've actually invested yourself in success. God will only make you achieve anything if you've actually gotten out of bed and done something towards that achievement. If God won't make you, it's just like that famous story with the lottery. Remember that story about this guy who came to the rabbi, says, Rabbi, I don't know what to do. I can't pay my bills anymore. I need to win the lottery. The rabbi gives him a blessing and says, you know what, next week, you'll win the lottery. And he's so happy, and he goes home and gets himself into more debts because he's winning the lottery next. Following week comes, the lottery is drawn, and he doesn't win it. So he goes back to the rabbi and says, Rabbi, you promised I would win the lottery. The rabbi said, yes, but did you buy a ticket? He hadn't bought a ticket. But that's the point. Sometimes you got to buy a ticket. You got to do something. You have to take that first step. Then God will come and meet you in between. If you haven't done anything, then God want to help you. That's not the type of God that we believe in. So that in many ways, that's really what faith is. Faith is I've given my all, and then still things don't work, and still I can't understand God. That's when I retort to faith. And that's how that reconciliation happens. Okay. Yes, please.
How doubt, challenges, hardships, how can we know if our faith is real? I mean, it's very easy to come to shul, we're all here,
Right.
We love the place, and that's the easy part. It's when we come up against something that tests that faith.
Very good.
Then we turn to God and we ask for help and to keep going through.
Right.
And keep that faith.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's very well said. Exactly. Hardship is part, and in many ways, a little bit of stress is good. We've spoken about this in the past. That's what makes us grow. Where there's no stress at all, in cemeteries, no stress. But that's because there's no life either. If you want to live, you want to have a little stress. It's what makes you grow. Now, if you've again used that stress to lift you up and to make you question, to make you doubt, which is also important, and you still can't understand God, that's when you resort to faith. Okay, good point. Okay, let's go to the next question here. What lessons have you learned from parenting, and how do you impart those lessons to your children? So, I have zero experience in parenting. I only have 10 children, so I don't know what type of question that is. I think that the most important lesson in parenting, and maybe we'll just focus on this one, is that parenting is modeling more than anything else. You can say what you say to your children. If you don't behave according to what you say, they won't register. They won't listen to you. And that's why I think that in many ways, the Jewish model, and I say that with pain in my heart, that you can drop off your children to Hebrew school and drop off your children to this program, to that program, while the parents themselves are not at all involved in Jewish life, is a model that is bound to fail. Because the children are not dumb. They're seeing their parents completely disconnected with their Judaism when they want them to be connected. Why should they be connected? My parents are not. That's why parenting equals modeling. If you model values, then those values, whether you say them to your children or not, will register. It will permeate their minds and their hearts. If you don't live according to those values, no matter how many times you say them, how many times you sing them, how many times you shout them, they just won't register. Mark Twain famously said that some people spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on education, and in the end, they all go down the drain when they try to save $5 as they skip the entrance of an amusement park to save $5 on that ticket. The children see them jumping over that fence, stealing basically. So all of the hundreds of thousands of dollars that they spent on educating them went down the drain, because that's what they'll learn. They'll learn from your modeling. I don't know if you know, but in human communication, there's a rule like that too. But I think it's emphasized and it's doubled and tripled in parenting. Have you ever heard of the rule called 8-37-55? Anyone? Look it up. It's a very powerful rule. Apparently, only 8% of what you communicate is through words. 37% is through your tonality. 55% is through your body language. That's true with human interaction. 8% is communicated with the words. People don't necessarily connect to the words. They connect to what they see and what they hear, the tonality and the body language. And I think it's very true in parenting too. If your body language, if your mind and heart are not in your words, then they have a maximum effect of 8%. That's it. And that's why parenting, I think, equals modeling, and that's the most important. Okay. Let's go to the next question here. Is listening to different rabbis teaching online, YouTube, considered Torah study, even if you don't actually study from the Torah? 13 petal rows. Hope the question makes sense. You lost me with the 13 petal rows there. But I understand the question. Is listening to YouTube, to a Torah class on YouTube, and not reading from the Torah itself, right? I think that's what the question is referring to, or not studying from a book, from the Torah book. Is that considered Torah study? Absolutely, it is. Torah study comes in many shapes and many forms. It's not just studying from the Torah itself. It's also studying from people who speak the words of Torah, from songs that sing the words of Torah. It's studying many different shapes and forms. And in fact, I would even submit to you that the most powerful way to learn Torah is not necessarily with you and the book. It's rather with you and your teacher. I could say that about myself. Most of the Torah I studied was from Rabbi Steinsaltz. And I try to continue to study every day from books, but it's not the same. It doesn't have the same effect. Because when you have a teacher like Rabbi Steinsaltz who teaches those words, then they come with fuel of holiness. And I don't think any book can emanate that. So you have different shapes and different types of Torah study. I would even say that sometimes Torah study also includes studying that is from life itself. You know, visiting the sick is a type of Torah study. Welcoming guests at home is a type of Torah study. Because then not only are you studying about, but you're actually doing that mitzvah. And there's no greater study than the deed itself. So doing life and doing mitzvot is a type of Torah study too. There is a discussion, if we want to get into it, there's a discussion of whether you have your Torah study is complete if your heart and mind are not fully into it. Because the Talmud says that one should study Torah by dying into the Torah world, killing himself in the Torah world. What does that mean? That when you are studying, nothing else exists. There's no distraction whatsoever. You're so immersed in Torah study that it doesn't matter. Your phone doesn't exist. People around you don't exist. It's your only existence. So that's what the Talmud says about Torah study. So if you study Torah and your phone is still on and still bothering you, or if you're listening to a podcast and at the same time you're jogging or whatever, are you still studying Torah or not? Because your whole heart and your whole mind is not necessarily in it. So there's a discussion about that. Some say that it's not complete Torah study, but you still get some credit. And I think that's the prevalent opinion. Anyway, so that's to that question. And then we have one more question and I can open this up. So I'm in a learning group that is actually conducted by my 15-year-old grandson. And we're studying Derech Hashem, which is a great book by Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto of 300 years ago. The following question came up last night. Why is it better to observe mitzvot from a fear of God than from a love of God? Since I mentioned that I was doing learning at CBT today, it was suggested I ask you. So is it better to observe mitzvot? Let me just rephrase the question. Is it better to observe mitzvot, to do a mitzvah out of fear of God? Because I'm afraid that if I don't do it, God is going to punish me. Or is it better to do it from a love of God? God, I love you, and therefore I want to do it, do this mitzvah. Now, this question assumes that it is better to observe mitzvah from a fear of God. Not sure I understand that. If you would ask me the question, I would say that from a love of God is better. But I'm not sure also of the source of Derech Hashem. Well, the one thought that does come to mind is that only in this instance is fear better than love. And that is that fear very often is object-oriented, not subject-oriented. It's other-oriented, not me-oriented. I'm afraid of something. I recognize that there's a presence. For example, I'm afraid of let's say, of a king. I'm afraid of a king, of a dictator. A dictator might punish me if I don't do what he or she wants me to do. So I'm afraid of this. So I'll do it because of the dictator. I'm not doing it for myself because I don't want to do it myself. The dictator tells me that I have to paint my walls in blue. Fine, I'll do it. Do I want to do it? I don't want to do it. I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it for the dictator. So it's other-oriented. It's dictator-oriented. When I'm doing things out of fear of God, I'm doing it for God. I'm not doing it for me. I'm only doing it because I'm afraid of God. So I'm doing it for. Love can be sometimes very selfish. Love might mean me, not you. Rabbi Steinmetz would often say that in every I love you, there's an I and there's a you, but very often the I is bigger than the you. And then it's not real love. And we've spoken about this, right? Sometimes we say, I love ketchup. You don't love ketchup. Because if you love ketchup, you let the tomatoes grow on its plant. So what do you love? You love the taste that ketchup gives you. So you love yourself. You love the pleasure that the tomatoes bring. So you love yourself. You don't love those tomatoes. You don't love ketchup. Very often, same with God. I love you, God, and therefore I'm going to do the A, B, and C, but don't forget to reward me. So who are you loving here? Yourself. And very often that's how it works. So maybe what this book is referring to is that it's better to worship God for God than to worship God for yourself. That's the only difference I can see here between the two. Okay, let's open this up to any other questions you may have. Please feel free to speak your minds. Any topic, remember, except for politics. Please, Geraldine. It depends on the day. Really depends on the day. Really. I can recommend many good books. I don't know. I'm just rereading a book called Give and Take by Adam Grant. I think it's a great book that proves why, even though the world might think that takers benefit more from the world, because after all, they're always taking, they're, expanding their bank accounts, they're expanding their comforts, they always take, but really givers are the ones that scientifically that are much happier. So that's a good book, but it's a general book. It's not a Simple Words by Rabbi Steinsaltz, my go-to. Depends on what you're looking for also. Simple Words by Rabbi Steinsaltz, really. The Rebbe by Joseph Telushkin, I think it's an astounding book. Yes, you.
When we encounter evil like how do you think about it? How do you see evil plan? If they're here with your role and therefore, doing carrying out a mission,
Right. Yeah, and also there's different layers of evil, right? There's the evil within, and then there's evil like terrorists. So different types of evil. So I think the general rule is that with the evil within is that we completely ignore it. We don't allow ourselves to be sucked in by it. And how do you ignore it? By enhancing the good in you. Hanukkah is coming up, and the big thing of Hanukkah is that you don't fight darkness. You ignite a light. When you ignite a light, the darkness is expelled automatically. Same year, without evil, sometimes we're not emotionally equipped or even spiritually equipped to deal with the evil within, whether it's temptations, other things. So what do? You distract yourself from them completely. You don't let them pull you in, and you focus on doing good. And the more you do good, the more slowly but surely it's expelled. That's the evil within. Evil without, which pertains not just to terrorists, but to evil in the world, I think works in many ways in the same way, that we have to enhance the good in the world. It's because every war between good and evil is not just a physical war as it is now. It's a spiritual war. So the more good we add in this world, the less evil there'll be. So I think it's dealt with in many ways with the same approach. But at times, like the IDF, for example, evil needs to be taken care of physically and in a very, very, sharp way. Of course, in a legal way too, and a very calculated way, intellectually, not emotionally. But that also is a part of the fight. But when it comes to us individuals, I think the weight on our shoulders is specifically this, ensuring that the spiritual goodness eventually expels the evil by itself, almost automatically.